Live from the SABC's Auckland Park studios, welcome to this week's last edition of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko, and on the show this evening, we put the spotlight on the Road Accident Fund, its refusal to account to Parliament or comply with Auditor General requirements. With all signs pointing to financial difficulties, can it fulfill its mandate and meet its financial obligations? My first guest is the chairperson of Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Hlengwa. Today was the deadline for the Children's Amendment Bill, whose aim, in part, is to reduce excessive numbers of children in the foster care system. We hear from civil society voices who reckon not all relevant voices have been heard. It's been such an eventful week in politics in so many ways. Some subtle, others not so subtle. We look at how the unfolding events may influence the body politic, from the upcoming ANC elective conference to coalitions running the country's biggest municipalities, all the way to the 2024 national and provincial elections. All that coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which begins right now. Well, it doesn't look like the Road Accident Fund is in good shape. It's been refusing to comply with the Auditor General's requirements, which means it can't account to Parliament. No one knows the exact state of the books. And my next guest has had to write to the Minister of Transport to request his intervention. Hlengwa joins me on the line. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for your time.
An absolute pleasure, Babuyo. Good morning to you and the viewers at home.
It doesn't look like, certainly, I mean, on the face of it, it doesn't look like this organization is in good shape.
Well, quite clearly it's not, because the Auditor General disclaimed the Road Accident Fund. And then what happened was that the Road Accident Fund went to court when the dispute mechanism which they have in place did not yield the results which were favorable to the Road Accident Fund. But of course, the Auditor General by law is compelled to actually table audit outcomes. So she did that, and insofar as Parliament is concerned, the audit outcome which has been tabled by the Auditor General has got force and effect. Therefore, in our view, it stands, notwithstanding the fact that the Road Accident Fund went to court. What is at the heart of the dispute, of course, is the accounting policy which was used by the Road Accident Fund. They migrated from GRAP to IPSAS 42, which the AG found not to have been correct. In our engagement with the Office of the Accountant General, they don't also agree with the migration. And the Accounting Standards Board as well, which is founded on the basis of the PFMA, also does not agree. So you've got three bodies: the Auditor General, the Office of the Accountant General, and the Accounting Standards Board not agreeing. And then in our own outlook as well, we are quite convinced that the AG has done what is within the parameters of the law, particularly to table the audit outcome. So now this has become a revolving door, because then the subsequent audit outcome as well is being taken to court. To cut a long story short, it seems to us that the migration was engineered at the Road Accident Fund with a view to assist them to deal with their continuously escalating liabilities, which now go into the billions of rands. This new accounting policy, in one way or the other, sort of deals with that. It sort of takes it off their books. So that on its own for us is problematic. So we met with the, I'm sorry to be long, but I think the context is important.
Yes.
We met with the minister and placed our position. Particularly, the initial concern is the fact that you've got the AG and ref in court, slugging it out in court. And we do not believe that audit outcomes must be, it must go to the extent to which they cannot be resolved within the parameters of the established practices. Anyway, we met with them and the board and all these other stakeholders, and the minister in the second meeting was unfortunately abroad, but the deputy minister was present. We gave the minister 7 days to explain the ministry position. I received the minister's letter a few days after the deadline. It was just a matter of interpretation of whether is it 7 days or 7 working days. Nonetheless, the response was received. The minister acknowledges that one, this is not a desirable situation that the AG and ref are actually in court, and that he is of the view that they should withdraw, the road accident fund should withdraw from court. But we're still going to consider the matter, of course, now on the basis of the minister's response, and I'm sure we're going to look for further written responses. Ultimately here, the fundamental issue is that there is a disagreement on the accounting policy, and the AG has disclaimed the road accident fund on the basis of that. The other issues insofar that come in and sort of conflate the situation around whether the road accident fund is insurance-like or is it a social benefit, those things are all secondary at this point. The point of departure is that the body is responsible for ensuring oversight as part of the conveyor belt matrix of accountability are not in agreement with the action steps that the road accident fund has taken. And so then they need to go back and acknowledge that they've got this problem, they've got a liability challenge, and resolve it. Because, see, the road accident fund is important in two folds. One, it generates money through a levy at the pump stations. So South Africans are funding it. And secondly, given the country that we have of high number of accidents on the roads, you need it to be actually functional, effective and efficient and agile in the execution of its responsibilities.
And that is really now, the nub, of the issue, whether it is indeed able to fulfill its mandate and can actually meet its financial obligations. A couple of quick ones, just from that background that you gave. Have you been able to determine whether insisting on the sort of accounting method that it is insisting on has any, in other words, there's a case to be made for what they are insisting on, or merely it's to make their books look good? In other words, aren't they, in a manner of speak, Steinhoffing, the books?
Well, without casting any aspersions, but the outcome of this course of action that they've taken is that it solves their liability problem. And we are not convinced that tweaking definitions and tweaking policies is how you deal with it, because ultimately the issue is that there is a weak control environment within the road accident fund insofar as its financial management processes are concerned. And so you can't really fix those fundamental challenges with changing definitions, because substantively the fundamental issues of shortcomings remain. So the outcome is that the liability is solved. The books look good, so we're not even wanting to entertain that, because we're wanting to rely on the independence of the Auditor General, because a disclaimed audit outcome really is inability to access information, and so unable to make a determination of what things are. That speaks to the ultimate mess. It's the same situation we are dealing with at the National Skills Fund and the headaches that we've had there, and obviously we are in the process of resolving them. So that's what really this is, Babwe.
Now, One wonders, they've been giving us a runaround the whole week. We also asked them to come on and really explain their situation and what has been happening. One can imagine that this situation has put you in a rather awkward situation, in that you've got to call them to account. There are rules that everyone, goes by or has to abide by. And here you are, certainly from sort of a cursory reading of the situation, here you are having to really get the minister, and you do have, you're supposed to, play your oversight role. In other words, no minister should be, doing you any favors, as a parliamentary body that's charged with those oversight responsibilities. These people should be actually complying, should be coming forward, should give you the things that you need to play your role. And here you are having to, because the way it sounds like now, it's like the minister had to do you, this parliamentary oversight body, a favor by asking these people to say, come on, be easy, guys, please, cooperate, kind of thing. Is that how you feel as well?
No. The ministerial intervention that we sought was on the basis that the board said that the minister's directive, when they were appointed to them, was that they should fix the liability. And so the question we were putting to the minister is this how we wanted the liability dealt with? And putting it to him, as we had already done so previously. And when I said that, as far as we are concerned as Parliament, the tabled audit outcome of the Auditor General stands, it's got force and effect. But what we cannot overlook is the fact that there is a court action which is at play, which we don't agree with. Not to say that the courts must not be utilized as arbiters in matters of dispute. But in this case, we fundamentally felt that the courts were being abused to resolve a matter which all the statutory bodies had said the accounting policy that was being utilized was not recognized. So the minister had to then explain his position, because the board was appointed by him, to say, is the mandate that you gave to the board actually being implemented in a manner that, one, you feel is correct, but secondly, consistent with the law. So that is also holding the minister to account.
Gotcha.
Thirdly, I want to say that notwithstanding the complexity of the matter, we have wanted to uphold the alteram partem rule for everybody involved to explain themselves. They have done that, and we have arrived at a determination to say the audit outcomes as tabled by the Auditor General stand. So the next phase, now having received the minister's response on the questions we put to him, we must then proceed with the next phase now of dealing with this. But I must hasten to say that there is very little that must be said, because that little on its own is enough. If you are disclaimed, it means you've got no information, therefore you need to go back and fix that. So the roadmap that we need to now develop is one which is within the parameters of the law and one which is within the prescribed policy framework that the Road Accident Fund must operate in, so that we can push back on the frontiers of the disclaimer. So whatever they really say at this point is mute, because they are in trouble already. What they need to come up with is an action plan to respond to an audit action plan to respond to the outcome that we have. So we don't want any favors, we seek no favors, and we were not done any favors. I think we are quite competent to stand our own and to deal with these issues as we should. And I think we are dealing with them. The matter here really is with the Road Accident Fund. They must accept that they are disclaimed and that they've got a liability. They've got challenges within their operational framework and within their control environment and within their due processes. And they need to fix it not with a backdoor kind of quick fix. They need substantive hard work to be put in to fix it, so that the Road Accident Fund can meet its mandate with confidence, not with these easy fixes of just wanting to change definitions or policies and think that you're going to come out of it alive.
Now, outside of definitions and court processes and all of that stuff, have you or will you anytime soon be looking at the actual, very real situation of the Road Accident Fund and make a determination as to whether they are indeed able to fulfill their mandate and meet their financial liabilities?
Well, that will arise out of the audit action plan that they need to go and develop. And it's also about the AG accessing information and being able to audit correctly so that they can give us a basis for interaction. But as I am reiterating is that a disclaimer tells you everything that you need to know, that things are bad, things are in trouble. All the things I've enumerated, quite frankly. So ultimately, yes, we are going to look at the Road Accident Fund matters, if not in this term of Parliament, which is very, very short, this fourth term. It will certainly come up in the first term of the next year. But we will be in constant communication at the very least to receive the written submissions. But the matter of the Road Accident Fund, I must say to the South African public, insofar as SCOPA is concerned, is receiving priority attention. I must also hasten to say there's a lot of problems within the public sector insofar as public funds are concerned, and we are juggling a lot of things. We are equal to that task, and we are appreciative of the fact that the presiding officers of Parliament are quite flexible to granting us permission to work even outside Parliament's program. So I can confirm that the Road Accident Fund matters are receiving our attention. It's the physical meetings, of course, which may not happen, but the constant communication of soliciting information and so on is certainly underway. But we will endeavor within our program this term to actually have the Road Accident Fund appear again and the minister to take these matters forward.
A quick last one arising out of what you've just said. One wonders just how widespread this sort of Stalingrad tactics and people, hiding behind a whole lot of things or excuses, to prevent them from accounting.
Well, it's a reality that is there, but I would not say that it's prevalent, given the fact that those whom have been disclaimed or not tabled, we call them in and they explain themselves. For example, we were able to resolve the TATC water-related matters insofar as the allied submissions are concerned. We are scheduling a meeting, in fact, of all those that have not submitted. Just today, I signed off on a letter which is calling National Treasury to come in on the 1st of November to explain why National Treasury has not tabled its own annual report. Then, of course, we must look at the SOEs that have not tabled. But all the ones I'm listing are in the minority. In the majority, all the submissions of annual reports, the AG's work has been tabled to Parliament, and it is now a matter of all of it being processed. In the next 2 weeks, we'll be prioritizing all those annual reports. We want to start with the disclaimed and the non-submissions, have their hearings and finalize all their matters, and then move on to the qualified audit outcomes. Maybe the final point is to say that it's becoming prevalent that our work is live work. As you peel one element of the onion, then something else happens, as is the case with the National Skills Fund. But yesterday we were able to resolve that matter and set it into motion in a logical way. And we are now tasking the SIU to go in to investigate further the National Skills Fund on the basis of the sample that was provided and the 5 billion rands challenge that has been there. The hawks are already at play in that space, and the department or the entity is already rolling out disciplinary processes. This is something which, of course, has taken us almost a year and a half, but here we are now rolling those processes. So it does become long-winded. It's just a matter of effort and determination. What I can say is, in the main, we've received all the necessary or the legislated annual reports and audit outcomes. Those that have not submitted are very much in the minority. They are a drop in the ocean. Not to say that's not significant. Any non-submission is a problem for us.
Mr. Hlangwa, thank you very much for your time this evening.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, and have a blessed weekend to you and the viewers.
Thank you. Of course, he is the chairperson of Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts. We have been trying the whole of this week to get the Road Accident Fund to come on the program. They've been giving us a runaround, promising to come. Can't find someone today, but we'll try tomorrow. That's been the story of this week. Hopefully, they will come forward someday. Today was the deadline for the Children's Amendment Bill, whose aim in part is to reduce the excessive number of children in the foster care system. But civil society groups are complaining about the time Parliament is given for public participation. Joining us now is Joan van Niekerk, a child rights and child protection researcher. Joan, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Perhaps we may start with a bit of background as to why this bill is so important and what, in a nutshell, it seeks to do.
In a nutshell, the Children's Act, because it's already been passed as an act, this is now an addition to the act, so it is called the Children's Bill, and it will be added to the act. In a nutshell, the act aims, along with the bill, when it is added, to offer the greatest amount of protection to children, as well as to safeguard their well-being and optimize their development. So the act, when it was first passed, was seen as a very progressive act because it just didn't deal with child protection issues in the narrow sense. It dealt with prevention, optimal development through making sure that early childhood education was appropriately organized and so on. So it's a very important piece of legislation.
Now, the complaint from civil society organizations is that not every voice has been heard and not sufficient time has actually been given. And from what our journalists were telling us today out of Parliament is that the committee is having none of it. And they are going ahead. No more time will be given to other voices that may not have been heard. Are you aware of this? And if so, what do you think that may do?
Well, I do believe that the Children's Bill is very, very important. But it has taken years and years and years to come to fruition. So I can understand Parliament's frustration on the one hand. On the other hand, the delays have been mainly due to the slowness of government processes, namely the Department of Social Development. And what happens is a bill is put forward, civil society comments on it, it goes back into Parliament, and then there are either erasures, deletions, or there are new provisions added. And the implementation of the Children's Act and the Children's Bill should be a partnership between government and the NPO sector. The NPO sector runs many of the services that are provided for in the Children's Bill and the Children's Act collectively, particularly in relation to prevention and child protection services. And therefore, it's truly important that government and civil society can agree on what is necessary. We've been very concerned about some of the deletions from the early version of the Children's Bill. And of course, the Children's Act in itself, being a very progressive piece of legislation, it was anticipated that there would be the need for revisiting it and fine-tuning it. But this is, I think, the revisiting of the Children's Act began in about 2013. So we're really talking about 10 years that this process has dragged on. So I feel quite divided about it. I think that some of the changes are urgently needed. On the other hand, I believe that civil society should, in actual fact, be part and parcel of the way forward.
Which of the sections or parts do you regard as being urgent and absolutely unnecessary? I mean, there are several that have made it into the news, dealing with fathers, for example, who have lived or not living with their biological mothers. I mean, that's just one of several issues that have been kind of contentious.
Indeed, and we want to encourage those of us who work in the field of child protection, see fathers as an integral part of the family, whether they live with the mother of the child or not. Fathers are truly important to their children's lives, and I'm not just talking as providers, but the emotional support, the guidance, and the importance of them being there as part of the family unit, even if they choose not to live with the mother. Children, when they talk about fathers that are absent, talk about their fathers with a lot of longing for a relationship. So we applaud making the way a little easier for fathers. We applaud things like some of the changes to parenting plans and parents' responsibilities and rights plans. But on the other hand, there are things that are truly important that have been left out of the Act and left out of the bill. One of the things that is very interesting to me is, although the implementation of the Act and the bill, when it eventually is passed, is dependent on a partnership between government and civil society organizations, the mechanism for the integration of those services is missing. There is a very simple section in the Act at the moment that talks about the importance of national, provincial, and local government all working together for the implementation of the Act and being mutually accountable to each other. But the NPO sector, who provide many of the services, is not included in that actual provision. I think that's a massive gap in the Act and in the bill. So that is an example. We need to be accountable to each other. We need to make sure that our services dovetail and that we are able to coordinate services. One of the biggest problems we have at the moment in child protection is the lack of coordination of services across disciplines. And children fall in the cracks because professionals like the police, the prosecutors, the social workers don't get together and jointly discuss what is best for the child under these particular circumstances. And so we find that children are left either hanging or in a vulnerable position simply because of the lack of coordination. So this is something that I think is a real gap in both the bill and the Act at the moment.
Quick last one, Joan, if I may. One of the issues that the opposition kind of almost collectively have raised, and something I mentioned right at the in my intro, is the issue of foster care.
Yes, and the fact that is that to do with the grant system. When I didn't hear your introduction. I'm sorry.
Not more.
Yeah. To me, foster care at the moment is not working all that well in this country. It's not just a matter of grants. It's a matter of spending more time making sure that the foster placements work, that people who accept children into the family do so because they're really committed to the well-being of children and not for the grant. And that to me is a problem because we do see some of that happening at the moment. And so there's not enough careful screening of foster parents, and there's certainly not enough monitoring of foster placements. The Act provides that social workers should be monitoring these placements very closely. But on the other hand, if you've got a caseload of 200 to 300 families, not 200 to 300 children, but 200 to 300 families, your ability to monitor all of those children on a regular basis is very, very limited. So that is one problem. The other problem has been, of course, that foster care is expensive. Institutional care of children is even more expensive and has the worst outcomes. And we would like to see the grant, if children are placed with relatives, we would not want to see that is not in foster care and there's just simply a kinship grant. We would also like to see monitoring of those children because we do come across children who are placed with kinship but are exploited by the family, maybe used as domestics or child carers, and the needs of the child are not addressed adequately. So that is another thing that is kind of open to debate.
Joan, let me thank you so much for your time and for your insights this evening.
Oh, thank you for talking about this. You know, we talk so much about children being our future, but we're not looking after our future if we don't look after our children properly. So thank you for flagging the issues.
Indeed. Thank you. Thanks to you for agreeing to come on and, in fact, enlighten us on those very issues. This, of course, conversation coming on the back of the fact that today was the deadline for the Children's Amendment Bill, and many feel that there are issues that haven't been properly canvassed, or many voices have been ignored throughout this process. After the break, the week that was in politics. Welcome back. This is the Watchdog. Well, it's been such an eventful week in politics in so many ways, some subtle, others not so subtle. Tonight, or in this segment, we look at how the unfolding events may just influence the body politic going forward, from the upcoming ANC elective conference to coalitions running the country's biggest municipalities, all the way to the 2024 national and provincial elections. Well, let's have a conversation with our analysts for this evening. I'm going to start with you, Prof, if I may. I mean, throughout this week, we were talking about, people were talking about how the so-called RET faction of the ANC is unraveling. This on the back of reports that ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule has defied the man everyone thought the RET faction sort of rallies behind, and is the de facto leader, and that's former President Jacob Zuma. Ace Magashule throwing his weight behind Zweli Mkhize, who is not the preferred candidate of the former president. Your thoughts?
No, thank you very much, Budvuyo, for having me, and good evening to your viewers. No, there is something very interesting here. On several occasions, I've made a proposal to the province that what would work best would be for the province to field one candidate. And I was anticipating situations like the one we're just referring to right now, whereby you will have voters being divided between the 2 or 3 candidates, whatever the number is. At the moment, we're talking about Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and we're talking about Dr. Zweli Mkhize. So for me, what would have worked best would be for the province to come up with one candidate, and then negotiate or lobby other provinces and say, this is the candidate that you are fielding for the presidency. Who are you fielding for the deputy presidency and for other positions? And then there is a trade-off. But then the moment you have two candidates, for me, that is a recipe for disaster, because you are depleting the votes that would have worked for you, and then they are now separated, and then you end up coming back empty-handed. So the issue of the RT faction is indeed a factor, in the sense that for quite some time we were of the view that the RT faction, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, was stronger. In fact, was the strongest. And therefore, we anticipated that whoever goes to this election in December on an RT faction stands a better chance. But now we have seen some divisions. There are people who are saying that they are going with the Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Others are saying they are going with Dr. Zweli Mkhize. And that is going to work well for the incumbent president, that is President Cyril Ramaphosa, because those votes will now be divided between the two, and will still maybe have other provinces fielding their candidates. So it doesn't augur well.
On that, Rebone, looking at some of the slates that are being posted on social media, some of them are really wish lists, but a lot of them actually are very close to the truth, because these are people who are trying to mobilize others, But as Prof is saying, it does look like Cyril Ramaphosa, for his part, is safe to the extent that his faction is rallying around him. But then, of course, what happens below him is a completely different story, which we're going to get into just now. But it does look like he is a formidable candidate, on paper at least, given what appears to be the unraveling of the so-called RT faction.
I think we must agree the RT faction is dead. It's not there. And why I say this, for example, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, we remember in 2017, he was running for president under the theme of unity. He would always hold his hands together. And he never supported the RT faction, in 2017. Now, if you look at the slate that is there right now, which for me, I think this are the two main slates. Is the one of Dr. Zweli Mkhize, where you have Paul Mashatile as the deputy president, you have Phumulo as Maswalo from the Eastern Cape as the SG, you have Nomvula Mkonyana as the DSG, and you have who's the TG on their slate. I think if you look at the pronouncement of KZN, and even on that slate of KZN, they don't have a TG candidate. But there are discussions that there's some that are saying that Lindiwe Ntshali must be the TG, right? And then you have the national chair, Esther Mathabati. But I want us to go back to 2 weeks where there was an alleged caucus of the CR17 faction. And when you look at the slate that comes out from that alleged caucus, you have Senzo Mchunu as the deputy president, You have Mdumiseni Ntuli now no longer be seen as a favor within the caucus. You have now Mbalula as the secretary general candidate for the CR22. And then you have like the Phoebe Porgiter as the DSG, and you have Gwen Ramokgopa as the TG. Now, for me, those are the two slates going to this conference. Then Nkosazana and the Lindiwe Sisulus, we don't know who are they standing up in terms of their lineup. And this, by the way, that caucus might have weakened President Ramaphosa. Reason being, Senzo Mchunu, coming from KZN, he's not as popular as he was probably in 2017, in terms, we know that he was very close to becoming the Secretary General of the ANC. You have the factor the factor of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the factor of Zweli Mkhize, the factor of Mdumiseni Ntuli. And by the way, he comes from Musadlala, the same region where former President Jacob Zuma comes from, and his wife was running for the regional chairperson in the recent conference of Musadlala, where she lost. She could not even make it to the PEC. So that has also means that he does not command any support in KwaZulu-Natal. So this really puts President Ramaphosa in a difficult position, because the person who seems to be getting a lot of joy is Paul Mashatile for the position of deputy president.
Well, Prof, it's interesting what Rebone has just said, because when I looked at one of the latest lists, you know, that have come out like in the past couple of days, which, as Rubona says, puts Senzo Mchunu for the position of deputy. It does have implications for a whole number of people. It means, of course, for instance, that the CR17 slate now excludes Paul Mashatile, whom many people say remains very, very powerful and influential. It also, you know, excludes Stan Matabata, who would have brought in a significant portion of Limpopo. I don't know what you make of it, whether you agree with Rubone as to whether it actually weakens or may just weaken Cyril Ramaphosa.
No, you know what? We are just talking hypothetically here, because there is nothing concrete until the final list is presented on the 16th of December, when the ANC convenes its conference. Before that time, there will be one slate after the other. I remember, for example, last week seeing another slate, which was a joke, saying that on the presidency they had former President Jacob Zuma and the like. So there is something very interesting happening. So the reality of the matter is, we are going to have real slates and we are going to have fake slates, which are put out there to either to test the waters or deliberately to confuse the branches and to confuse provinces. So these things will always happen. But the points that Rubone is making are very critical, in the sense that if you look at the Minister of Water and Sanitation, for example, that is Senzo Mchunu, you are absolutely right when you say that he doesn't have popularity in KwaZulu-Natal. When he was in KwaZulu-Natal as a premier, he commanded support. And in fact, I'm one of the people who was happy with his leadership style. Even when he was the MEC for Education, he did a sterling job. But the problem started when these factions began in the ANC, and he aligned himself with the CR17 faction, and that, of course, did not go down well with the majority of the people in KwaZulu-Natal, which explains the point that Rubone is making right now, that not only did it affect him negatively, and not only did it affect the CR17 negatively, but it also affected his wife as well. So which is why, of course, I don't see his wife emerging victorious in any election, at least not anytime soon, because of that history. So that is the reality. So now, if the slates that Rubone is alluding to, that allegedly came out of a caucus, that the slate were to be true, then of course that is going to cause a dent on the president. But unfortunately, if you don't have a strong contender, you will still win, even if you're not doing well, which is what we've been saying with the ANC. That the ANC has been winning elections, not because it is getting strong in each and every election, but because the opposition is getting disjointed in each and every election. So you might see something similar then, whereby Cyril Ramaphosa might win, not because he's the best candidate, but because contenders are depleted, so to speak.
Quickly, Rubona, before we go beyond the ANC, Linda Sisulu got the nod from the women, but is that enough?
Which women? That's the question that we must ask. You know, because I mean the Women's League, which we know that there's an interim task team, which is led by Baleka Mbete and Maropen Ramokgopa as the coordinator. Now, if you go back again to 2017, you remember just on the eve of the conference, Baleka Mbete says, I am rallying behind Cyril Ramaphosa for the position of president. The coordinator of the Women's League task team is their international relations advisor to President Ramaphosa. Now, they've made it clear that they don't support anyone for presidency. Their interest is in the secretariat, or they feel that women should emerge. So I don't know which women are those, because there was also a tweet, you know, if you remember some days ago, I don't know if you saw it, of Batabile Dlamini also distancing herself from this, you know, as the former president of the Women's League, you know. So I don't know which women are those.
Prof, we also saw the DA trying to run with an issue that, of course, touched South Africans in their studios, so to speak, and that was the perks that President Cyril Ramaphosa had signed off on. Of course, almost immediately, the president taking the sting out of their, that focus issue as far as the DA is concerned. And this is a party, of course, that has been wounded recently. We're seeing the exodus continuing, of leaders, black leaders in particular, leaving the party. Should we read anything as to what may well be the strategy of the official opposition going into 2024?
No, the DA is a very interesting party. Coincidentally, I've just written a piece a few days ago whereby I was tracing the history of the DA, how it was formed, which political parties constituted the DA, what was their mandate, the formation of the new National Party, the split between the new National Party, the moderates or the progressive ones joining the ANC and the conservatives, forming the core of the DA and all of that. So I think that the DA has come to a realization that in 2024, it doesn't stand a chance of winning the election or doing even better. So now, given the fact that there's been an exodus, like we are just saying, of black leaders from the DA, the recent one being Zwagele Mncwango, who did a sterling job for the DA in KwaZulu-Natal. So the DA is now being strategic. They are identifying battles that are winnable. It's like taking the low-hanging fruits, as people would say, saying that this is an issue that is of concern to everyone, regardless of party affiliation, even for people who are not belonging to any political party. So let us address this issue and then make sure that we make a lot of noise around it, and we're going to rally support. And of course, it worked well for them. I'm one of the people who support the view. I don't support the DA, but I support the view that they put forward, that you cannot have a ministerial book in the manner that it was presented and have the president signing it without even thinking about it. The fact that he rescinded his resignation, for me, is a non-issue. In fact, he should not have considered it even in the first place, given the current economic context and the political context under which we find ourselves. It was not a wise move at all. So the DA strategically went for that one, and they did well.
Well, I mean, the DA's losses have been Action SA's gains. Zwagele Mncwango, who was formerly the DA's KZN leader, is now Action SA's leader in that province. Bongani Baloyi, who is the former mayor of the Midvaal, previously with the DA, is now the party's Gauteng chaplain. Do you see these individuals making any very real, significant, impact in how, in the growth of the of Action SA?
Action SA on its own was formed. Mashaba, we know that he left the DA, as the mayor of Johannesburg, and forms Action SA. So it was bound that most of the DA leaders would resign and form Action SA, because these are comrades who have worked together in the same party, the DA, and as they might have felt that the DA, as they raised, that is no longer the party that they thought it was, that it is today. So I think they will be making serious inroads, for the Action SA. We have seen in Johannesburg.
But can they do that if all they are seen as, what many people see them as, is that they are, let's call it DA light?
Do politics of today still have ideology? There's no ideology. You look at all the different parties. People vote based on what they think, what you are saying, when you are running your elections campaign. It's not about who was where and so forth. So the politics of today, there's no ideology. There's no whether you are from the DA and now you are with Action SA. If that was the case, Action SA would have not done well in 2021.
Prof, you have on the Herman Mashaba, the leader of Action SA, after that long consultation process that people have been talking about over the past couple of weeks. Apparently, he's gotten his way, which means, the party faithful have said no to any working relationship with the African National Congress. One wonders what that means, because, for coalition arrangements in Gauteng in particular, remember, recently the ANC led a motion of no confidence successfully against Mpho Phalatse in the city of Johannesburg. They are gunning for Ekurhuleni next week on the 26th. Does the action as a factor, if I may call it that, is it going to make it easier for the ANC to claw its way back into these metros?
No, you see, Action SA's politics is very confusing. And like Rebona was saying, in fact, we expected that obviously former DA members would join Action SA. But I think Herman Mashaba is playing with fire. In politics, we never say, I will never do this. We never say that. You might say, for now, this is not the route I'm going to take. Because tomorrow we'll be singing a different tune altogether. We have seen that with the EFF, for instance, when the leader of the party and many other leaders of the party were saying that they would never vote with the ANC. They would rather vote for a ghost than voting for the ANC. And then all of a sudden we hear that they're in talks. So having said that, I think that Action SA has to be extra careful. One, they're a new party. And then two, there have already been concerns about the leader of the party, that is Herman Mashaba, that he's being authoritarian. Whether that accusation is true or not is another issue. But the reality of the matter is, for a new party, you cannot take a stance like they've taken, saying that we'll never have any discussions with the ANC, when the reality is that coalitions are becoming a reality. So one day you will find yourself having to swallow the humble pie and then having to talk to the ANC. And then what does it say about you? Will people still trust you? I don't think so.
Quickly, Rebona, do you think Herman Mashaba will live to regret having done things, as Prof was saying, the way he has done them, that you never say never, you look at the situation, study it, and look at what will work for you?
No, absolutely. As I said earlier on, the politics of today is not about ideology. So obviously, it's all about your interest as a party. So for him to say never, I mean, anything is possible in 2024, So you might find yourself out in the cold and just standing there alone. And if you move then, sing a different tune in 2024, people will see you as a hypocrite.
And let's leave it there for this evening and for this week. Thanks to both my guests for coming through, looking at, of course, the week that was in South African politics. Have a great weekend and do join us again on Monday at the same time.